There's a part of every dream that no one claps for. The part where you're tired, unsure, and questioning why you ever believed in yourself in the first place. But that part, the messy middle, is exactly where the real strength is born. Peter didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. He didn't have investors, connections, or even a clear roadmap. What he did have was a quiet determination that never fit inside the walls of a regular job. For years, he worked at a shipping warehouse. Steady income, predictable schedule, the kind of job people stay in because it's safe. But every night, as he drove home, he'd feel this nagging ache in his chest, like he was living a life that didn't belong to him. He always loved repairing old furniture, restoring pieces people threw away, and turning them into something beautiful. Friends encouraged him to take it seriously, but he always brushed it off. Then one day, after a tense meeting with a supervisor who talked down to him, something snapped inside. Not anger, clarity. He went home, sat at his kitchen table, and whispered to himself, "It's time." Within a month, he quit his job and launched his own woodworking and restoration business. At first, everything felt exciting. He created a logo, built a small website, and started taking orders. People loved his work. Compliments poured in. His social media grew. From the outside, it looked like he was thriving. But behind the scenes, reality hit harder than he expected. Some weeks, he'd work 10-hour days and barely break even. Some clients tried to bargain his prices down to nothing. A few jobs took so long that he earned less per hour than he did at his old warehouse job. He'd watch bills pile up, stare at his bank balance, and wonder if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. There were nights he'd sit alone in his workshop, surrounded by half-finished projects, wondering if everyone who doubted him had been right. There were mornings he'd wake up with a pit in his stomach, afraid of what would go wrong that day. And then came the job that nearly broke him. A customer hired him to restore an antique dresser. It looked simple, but once he began stripping it, he discovered damage that had been hidden under layers of paint. Fixing it required extra materials, extra hours, and extra patience. By the time he finished, he had spent more money than the client paid. He didn't tell anyone. He just drove the dresser back to the customer's house, carried it inside, and forced a smile. When he got back into his truck, he exhaled, feeling defeated. "How am I ever going to make this work?" he whispered. But something shifted in him that night. He realized he wasn't failing. He was learning. He was earning experience that no job could ever give him. So he started approaching things differently. He learned how to price his time properly. He learned how to say no to clients who wanted cheap labor. He learned which materials were worth the investment and which shortcuts cost more in the long run. He learned to schedule realistically instead of rushing and burning out. He wasn't losing money anymore. He was building wisdom. And with every adjustment, every lesson, every late night mistake, he figured out how to fix. Something inside him grew sharper, stronger, more confident. The turning point came unexpectedly. One Saturday morning, he received a call from a boutique hotel owner downtown. She had seen his work online and wanted him to restore 20 vintage pieces for her newly renovated space. It was the biggest project he had ever been offered. He almost said no out of fear. But the version of Peter sitting in that workshop at 2 a.m. months later, the version who didn't quit, pushed him to say yes. And this time, he was ready. He priced the job properly. He laid out the deadlines in writing. He trusted his skills, the ones he had earned through every difficult moment. The hotel owner loved the vinyl pieces so much, she recommended him to 3 other business owners. And just like that, the tide began to turn. Peter wasn't just surviving anymore. He was thriving. Not because he avoided failure, but because he faced it, learned from it, and kept going when he had every reason to give up. He built something no paycheck could ever give him: confidence, ownership, and a life that finally felt like his. So if you're out there building something from scratch, feeling the weight of uncertainty, feeling like you're losing more than you're gaining, breathe. You're building foundation. And every hard moment is shaping you into someone who won't break when the blessings finally arrive. The question is never, am I good enough? The real question is, am I willing to grow through the parts no one sees? Because that's where your future is built. Together, let's move from doubt to power, one story at a time.